because the last game of this MLS Heineken Rivalry week will not be finished until 9:30 my time and around 12:30 a.m. in the East Coast, I decided to once again split the review into two parts, and that I'm going to look at the first 6 games in part 1 of this Heineken Rivalry week review and look at the last 5 games in part 2 because, tomorrow is Monday and I have to get up early to go to school, and there is no way in the world I would be doing a 11 game review at 10 o'clock in the evening. Like, I would be doing until midnight, and that just does not work in terms of me have to wake up 7 a.m. in the morning tomorrow to go to school. But that being said, let's take a look at the first game, which is the one-side derby. And the reason why this is the one-side derby is because Atlanta has been the only team that has been able to win in this so-called derby and rivalry game. And they, of course, validate that name by winning once again against Orlando City 1-0 in this game. And guess who scored the only goal for Atlanta United in this game? Yup, that's right. It's the record breaker Joseph Martinez scoring from Ezekiel Barco, and that he, of course, extend his record of 12 straight games with a goal. And that it just seemed like Joseph Martinez loved to score against Orlando City. I can understand why Orlando City is absolutely frustrating and probably very salty about after this game with the fact that, once again, their daddy, Joseph Martinez, has scored against them once again. But, when you look at this game, this is probably the 5th game or even the 6th game in a row where Orlando City had a lot of chances at home and that they had a lot of shots at home to potentially put the ball into the back of the net, but yet they weren't able to score one goal. And that in this game, they had 22 shots compared to 15 that Atlanta has, 5 shots on goal compared to 3 that Atlanta has, 9 shots off target compared to 10 that Atlanta has, 8 shots that was blocked compared to 2 that Atlanta has, and possession-wise, 48% possession compared to 52% possession. And that, I think, for now on, when Orlando City has a lot of shots, for now, I think I should just look at the shots total for Orlando City, and that if they had more than 15 or even 10 shots in a game, I know they're going to lose. Because this has been the case for them this season where, for whatever reason, when they have less than 10 shots and when they only have 3 or 2 shots on goal but only have 10 shots in a game, they win those games, and then they're able to score goals in that game. But when they shoot from everywhere and they put up a big lump of shots at the end of the game, they could not put away that. I mean, I just don't know why that is the case, but that's been the pattern for them this season. And if you're an Orlando City fan, that has to be very infuriating, considering the fact that why in the world does this team tends to be very clinical when they don't shoot a lot in front of goal, but when they shoot everywhere from the goal, they just could not put the ball back in the back of the net. But yeah, with this win for Atlanta, they of course retained first place. And I also didn't mention the fact that the first 20 minutes was very fast-paced. This game was almost play on ice in the first 20 minutes with the way that both teams was going up and down the field to try to get the first goal. And that, of course, things did kind of dive down a little bit after that because, the pace that this game was going and how both teams was kind of just going on transition nonstop, there was no way that kind of pace is going to keep up, especially the fact that this game is played under the humid Saturday evening in Central Florida. So, yeah, still, at the end of the day, I think this was definitely an enjoyable game, and I'm pretty sure for Atlanta, it's a very enjoyable game for them because they once again get over their so-called rival, Orlando City, and that, as I said, they retain at the top of the Eastern Conference. And as for Orlando City, it's a very frustrating loss. It's a big missed opportunity for them to potentially get into the playoff race. And in fact, they kind of also lost ground in terms of the playoff race, as I will mention who exactly they lost ground later in this video. But moving on into the next match is the Cascadia Derby. Now, something very interesting happened in this derby, and that in the first 33 minutes, both fan base, both from the Timbers Army and also the Sounders fan base and ECS, decided that they are not going to chant for the first 30 minutes. and that they are going to, well, actually not just for the first 30 minutes, but for the first 33 minutes, both fan base decided to have a silent protest because they are protesting in terms of the new MLS policy of banning political signage in the stands, which one of those signage that has been just so controversial and has been talked a lot throughout these last couple of weeks is the Iron Front signage. Now, I want to make a video about this and talk about whether or not if this is a great idea for MLS to do it. But the problem is, if I want to do a video about this go into politics. And you know, when you do something about politics on YouTube, it's a death sentence. It's like walking on a tightrope without a safety net. And that I just don't like to talk about politics on YouTube, and that I'm going to definitely get a lot of backlash if I talked about it, and that the comment section is going to get very cancerous, and that there's going to be a mix of opinion. But all I'll say about this rule is that I feel like this, if you want to hear my opinion of whether or not if MLS should create this new or should endure this new policy of banning political signage in the stands, my answer is absolutely not. And, I know you probably won't agree with me because this is a very controversial kind of topic, and I have heard both sides of the story, but for me, I think the reason why they should not ban political signage is because no other league does this. This is the only American Pro League that actually banned in terms of political signage. Like, not even the NFL, which has gone through a lot of criticism with the political speech and all this kind of stuff, does not ban political signage in their stand. And because of the fact that MLS, in terms of the audience of MLS is a very young and kind of diverse audience, and that it's more outspoken than any other league that is here in the US, I think this is just a bad kind of policy, and that this policy will really kind of steer in terms of troubling kind of a relationship between the fans and also the league, and that you're going to continue to see these kind of protests from other team where they just refuse to cheer and refuse to of course kind of create a great atmosphere and MLS game because of this controversial topic. But that's all I have to say about that, because I don't want to get too political, and if you disagree with me, go ahead in the comment section, but try not to be very cancerous, and try not to just really kind of create a rant when you disagree with me in terms of what I just said. But now going back to the game itself, well, the Timber had a lot of opportunity in this game, and I think this is probably the second straight week that I see the Timbers had a lot of chance in this game, but yet they aren't able to put the ball into the back of the net, and that is the biggest reason why they weren't able to win this game. Like, it happened last week against Atlanta, where they had their fair chances of at least putting one or two past into the back of the net, but that didn't happen in that game, and it also didn't happen in this game too. Well, actually, it did happen in this game where they were able to put one into the back of the net, but it didn't happen until the second half. And then in the first half, during that 33-minute protest, I was also very interested to see what happened if one of these teams score, and whether or not if the fans are going to cheer when one of those teams scored during this 33-minute protest. And that the Sounder, of course, did get the opening goal in the 22nd minute when Christian Rodin scores from Ruidíaz. And, the Sounders fans definitely cheer, but it's definitely not as loud of a cheer as you would think that in a Cascadia derby, whenever a team scores, their fans is going to go erratic, and they're just going to go absolutely crazy. That kind of didn't happen. I mean, there was still cheering, there was still celebration for the Sounders away support, but it wasn't as loud as I would think it is, and that it just shows you that they are very committed in terms of this 33-minute protest, even when they just saw their team go up 1-0 against their hated rival. Now, in the second half, they double that lead when Ruidíaz scores from Jordan Morris. Jordan Morris had an amazing game in this game and had caused a lot of trouble in of this Timbers defense that just they had no answer in terms of how to deal with him. Now, Valeri did get one back for the Timbers, and that it was a very fortunate goal for Valeri because on this free kick, he basically struck it into the wall. And sometimes when you strike it into the wall, the one danger about the fact that when the ball is struck into the wall is that sometimes it just takes a wicked deflection and that it somehow just still ends up into the back of the net. Well, it exactly is what happened in this instant where, Valeri, of course, hits the wall, but it took a wicked deflection back toward the net, which, Stefan Frey, he had no chance of saving that with that wicked deflection. And the Timbers, of course, got one back, and it's now 2-1 in this game. And then they thought that they got the equalizer in the 80th minute when Brian Fernandez scored to tie the game up at 2 apiece. But they look at VAR in that instant, and it find that the goal was actually disallowed because he was in an offside position, and it was pretty clear that he was in an offside position when he, of course, scored that goal. So the game stays at 2-1, and that, of course, is the final score of this game as the Timbers had 20 shots compared to 11 that Sounders has. 6 shots on goal compared to the 4 that the Sounders had. 11 shots off target compared to the 4 that the Sounders has. Both teams had 3 shots that was blocked, and possession-wise, 56% possession compared to 44% possession that the Sounders had. And with this win for the Sounders, they are actually now back to second place in the Western Conference. I know, the Western Conference is just so crazy right now that even if you have a bad slump, if you can get one win, like what the Sounders got in this game, you can, of course, get all the way back to second place in the Western Conference. And that hopefully with this win for the Sounders, this will really kick off their run in the second half of the season and really start a good run heading into the playoffs, because they really need it considering the fact that how much they have been struggling so far in the last couple of weeks. And as for the Timbers, yes, it was a disappointing loss, and yes, they still have a lot of home games left of this season, but they have now lost 3 games at home so far this season in the 8 games that they play at Providence Park, and that is almost more than half of the game that they weren't able to get a result at Providence Park. And yeah, I mean, this is definitely I'm pretty sure a lot of people thought Portland is going to they are coming into this home stretch where they're in a good spot, and that they're probably just gonna win most of their home games and get it to to near the top part of the Western Conference, which they still can do considering the fact that how tight the Western Conference is. But when you look at how much they have struggled so far this season at home, and the fact that this is another game that proves that they just cannot quite break down a team that put on a low block on them. Seattle, as I mentioned in the preview, I knew that they were going to put a bit of a low block on the Timbers, and I'm pretty sure every team from now on from the rest of the season is going to try to put a low block on the Timbers whenever they play on the road. And the fact that the Timbers still hasn't shown that they have the ability to break down a low block and, of course, able to put the ball into the back of the net and have all those creative players to break down those low block that their opponent puts on them, that does makes me a little bit concerned about this team, and that it seemed like every teams have started to figure a way to play the Timbers, and that it has been proven for the last couple of home games that it's been a very effective way to play against them. Now, I'm not going to say that the Timbers are going to potentially miss the playoffs because of the fact that they cannot break down a bunker kind of team. In order for a team to win against the Timbers by playing a low block kind of style, is that they need to have a very good defense. And there were a couple of times the Sounders, with the fact that they try to play a low block and that they kind of got exposed a little bit, leaving a couple of holes in that low block because of not defending very well, and that the Timbers had a couple of chances to potentially score in that. But this is also the other problem that the Timbers had. Whenever they had the chances to basically exploit the low block, or their opponent makes a mistake and exploits some space in those spots, they weren't able to put the ball into the back of the net and not being clinical enough. So that is something that the Timbers going to have to figure out if they want to not only make the playoffs this season, but also get up in terms of the standings in the Western Conference. But moving on into the next match is the New York Derby. So NYCFC, of course, win this one 2-1 against the Red Bulls, but the Red Bulls actually got off to a great start in the 10th minute when Alex Mule scores from Kaku to give them a 1-0 lead. But then from then on, NYCFC pretty much dominate the rest of this game, and that, they started to really put a little bit of a shooting gallery in front of Luis Robles' goal, but Robles a couple of times makes some big save, and also it was a combination of NYCFC not being very clinical in this game. But they did eventually find the equalizer after putting all that pressure against the Red Bulls when Morales, of course, scores a penalty. Murillo once again makes a big mistake by bringing down Morales in the box, and that it was Maxi Morales puts away the penalty to tie the game up at 1 apiece. And then in the second half, once again, NYCFC had a lot of chances to put the ball into the back of the net, but this time they were able to score early in the second half, and they didn't have to wait until almost the whole half to finally put away their chances. And it was Aber that scores from Tinnerholm and Morales to give them a 2-1 lead. But even after that, they still had a lot of chance to potentially put this game away, and that the longer this game stay at 2-1, the more concern I have with NYCFC, because we've seen time and time again this season, when you see a team don't put away their chances and let their opponent stay in this game, it's going to really haunt them back late in the game. And that late in the game, there was actually a sending off that happened, which I forgot to actually put it on the board. And that Matarrita, of course, got himself sent off after he got into a bit of a scuffle with, God, I forgot who it was. I think it was Murillo that he got a little bit of a scuffle with. And, it isn't a New York derby, and it isn't a rivalry game without a bit of a scuffle and a sending off, and that it just seemed like what I'm seeing with all these rivalry games, usually when you have a scuffle, it either happens right at the end of the game when one team is just frustrated that they of course lost their biggest rival and kind of lashed that out with their emotion at the end of the game, or it's like doing the game where both teams kind of get into its heads a little bit, and that it really sets up to right at the end where both teams really started to kind of do a mini brawl at the end of the game to show that frustration. And although that of course didn't happen in this instant, what happened in this instant that got Matarrita sent off was he tried to attempt to headbutt Murillo there, and that he didn't really quite connect with the headbutt. It's more like kind of like him trying to headbutt him in the chest, but whenever you try to headbutt someone or attempt to headbutt someone, that is going to be an automatic red card. Now, fortunately for NYCFC, since that red card happened so late in the game, the Red Bulls didn't have a lot of time to capitalize with a man up. And that of course, was the final score of this game at 2-1 in favor of NYCFC, as NYCFC had 14 shots compared to 7 that the Red Bulls had, 7 shots on goal compared to 2 that the Red Bulls had. Both teams had 5 shots off target, 2 shots that was blocked compared to none that the Red Bulls had, and NYCFC had 57% possession compared to 43% possession that the Red Bulls had. And for NYCFC, they of course got a huge victory against their rival, and that, as I said many times before with rivalry games, whenever you can get one over your rival, not only you get some bragging rights at the end of the game, but also you could really kick off your season and start a good run for the end of the season. And hopefully, maybe for NYCFC, that is going to be the case, as they're still in prime position in terms of getting at the top of the Eastern Conference if they, of course, can win those games in hand that they had. And as for the Red Bulls, it's a very frustrating loss in this game, and that they definitely did not play very well in this game. Like, besides the first 15 minutes, they really, they didn't even bother marking 2 of the most dangerous men that NYCFC had in this game, which was Tati Castellanos and Aber. And when you decide not to do that, yeah, you deserve to lose this game. But moving on into the next match is going to be New England. So New England, of course, won 2-1 against Chicago, and this kind of felt like a grind-out victory for the refs, because this was definitely not a good performance for the Reds, and I'm pretty sure Bruce Arena will not be happy with this result. But they did get the 2-1 win, and they start the goal scoring in the 17th minute when Zahibo scores from Brendan Bai and Carlos Hill to give them a 1-0 lead. Chicago did restore parity in the 41st minute when Francesco Calvo scored from Nicolas Gaitan. A lovely free kick delivery there from Gaitan that Calvo was able to not only head that one in, but time his run perfectly to get himself free and head that one in to tie the game at 1 apiece. And in the second half, just as we thought that potentially this game might end up in a 1-1 draw and Chicago might have got a good point on the road, it's Gustavo Bou that scored what looked like could be the goal of the week this week when he scored from about 25 yards out to give New England a 2-1 lead, and they would of course end up winning by that score. As in terms of the shots in this game, 11 shots compared to 10 that Chicago has. Both teams had 5 shots on goal, 6 shots off target compared to 4 that the Fire has, 1 shot that was blocked compared to none that New England has, and New England had 60% possession compared to 40% possession that the Fire has. And like I said, it wasn't a pretty victory, and that they really kind of grind out this victory, and also the fact that once again their $10 million guy Gustavo Bou, which I think right now with the way that he is scoring with this Revs team, that $10 million seems like an absolute bargain right now that New England just got, and that he has really just become a difference maker with this New England team ever since he have arrived with the Revs, and that they of course get another 3 points, and that they're actually now just 1 point back of 5th place DC United. And speaking of which, DC, the reason why I said that the Revs are 1 point back of DC is because coming into this game, DC had a 4-point gap on the Revs, but it's now down to 1 point because they lost to the Union in this game known as the Desperation Derby, and that they, of course, lost 3-1 against the Union, and that this game was very similar to what happened when both of these teams met, where, you know, coming into this game, I knew both of these teams needs to get a win, but once again, it just seemed like one of these teams really wants it more than the other, and that the Union really wants to, of course, once again win against DC United, which they had a good record against them coming into this game, and they did exactly that. And in the first half, man, it looked like this one was going to get ugly, and that this was going to be like what happened last time when it ended 5-1 in favor of the Union. And it all started in the 5th minute with Shibilko scores from Wagner and Eriksson. Kasper Shibilko had a monster game in this game, scoring a goal and also putting 2 assists, and that one of the assists came in the 16th minute when he assisted Aronson to give the Union a 2-0 lead. Then it was him again assisting Elzinho to give the Union a 3-0 lead at that point. And again, at that point, I thought this was going to look like it could end up to be like 5-1 again in that last meeting between both of these teams. But in the second half, DC did kind of show some life, and that Acosta, of course, did get one back for DC, and that they started to kind of get back into this game, but unfortunately they weren't able to put one into the back of net after that, and that was as close as they got in terms of this game. And in terms of the shots in this game, the Union had 15 shots compared to 7 that DC had, 6 shots on goal compared to 4 that DC had, 7 shots off target compared to 2 that DC had, 3 shots that was blocked compared to 1 that DC had, and possession-wise, 57% possession compared to 43% possession that DC had. And if you're a DC fan, yeah, it is time to sound the panic button, because this is just, when you look at these last couple of games, or even just look at these last couple of months, this team has looked nothing like a team that is ready to make the playoffs. And I really think even if DC is going to make the playoffs, which is still in doubt consider of the fact that they have been in just an awful kind of run for a long time now, I don't even think they're even going to win a game in the playoffs. Like, the fact that the attack has just struggled so much throughout this season, and that in this game it also have started to show a new problem that DC had in this game, which is that the defense is the new problem, and that the defense was absolutely god awful in this game. Like the first goal that they conceded, I saw a couple of DC players just standing there and let Shibilko to potentially strike one into the back of the net, which he did exactly that. And then it was the same case with the third goal where Elzinho, I know that he is known to do a lot of kind of nice skill move and trying to score a spectacular goal. But the fact that some of the DC players just kind of let him through with ease is just absolutely criminal defending that I've seen. And that, for DC, like I said, they are in deep trouble right now, and that I'm pretty sure their fan base are sounding the panic button. And that not only they are in deep trouble right now, but they could be in deep trouble in the future too, because once Acosta and Rooney leave this team, and we kind of saw how in this game, Acosta did kind of play in this game, but we already saw with them not having Rooney on the pitch that this DC team is just look like one of the worst team in the Eastern Conference right now. And I mean, I'm not going to be surprised if this team does make the playoffs with the way that it was going to happen, where this long stretch of run where they haven't really been playing good at all, and that they kind of just scrap some of those victory when they do win those games, that eventually was going to cut them on, and that this could really resort them to not only not be one of the top team in the Eastern Conference, but actually drop out of the playoff race. And that looked like could be most likely the case if they continue this run. Now, speaking of the playoff race, the big winner in terms of the playoff race this week is TFC, because they were the only team out of the four teams that is in that 7th spot that, of course, was able to get a win, and that they, of course, now take sole possession of 7th place in the Eastern Conference and sole possession of the last spot in the Eastern Conference with a 2-1 win against their hated rival, the Montreal Impact. And in the first half, there was no score. And let's just move on from that, because there wasn't really much worthy to talk in the first half. But in the second half, Montreal, of course, did get on the board first, and it was Bojan that scored his first ever goal in MLS, and that this could definitely be nomination of Goal of the Week, because this was lovely stroked by Bojan from outside the box to give Montreal a 1-0 lead. But that was really the only kind of reliable attack that Montreal had in this game. Like, the Impact, they barely attacked throughout this game, and that TFC really had most of the chances. But TFC, once again, as we've seen a couple of times this season, were very wasteful with their chances. But they did finally broke through in the 63rd minute when Delgado scores to tie the game up at 1 apiece. Evan Bush, he probably had one of his worst games for Montreal in this one, and that he made a big mistake in this instant where he basically just tried to punch the ball out, but he didn't punch it hard enough, and that it goes right back to Delgado that basically just slots it home into the back of the net to tie the game at 1 apiece. Then in the 81st minute, once again, Evan Bush was the big culprit in this goal that he conceded, because Justin Morrow, of course, did score from Altidore and Bradley, but the fact that Morrow, with the way that he hit that shot, how he hit kind of a weak shot on the ground, and that Bush kind of got a hand to it, but somehow it still popped up in the air and pretty much popped up and redirect into goal. And that in the end, despite the fact that the Impact tried their best to clear that one off the line as that ball was bouncing toward goal, they couldn't quite do it, and that TFC, just like that, got a 2-1 win. Now, in the 95th minute, and I know after all this kind of talks about this game, this is probably going to be forgotten, but it's something that I want to kind of talk about, which is that in the 95th minute, there was a VAR review that said whether or not if TFC, of course, got the penalty to potentially give them the third goal, and that it looked like when this ball was struck toward goal, Bakary Sagna looked like he had his hand in an unnatural position, and that he, of course, handballed it. And, originally, the TFC player thought that was the case, and that the referee looked at VAR. And originally, I thought that that surely has to be a handball with Sanya raising his hand in an unnatural position to block that ball. But VAR did not overrule that, and that this is another example of why VAR sometimes are just so inconsistent, because I really think they got it wrong in terms of that. But thankfully, as I said about how not a lot of people is going to be talking about this because it doesn't really affect the result whatsoever, TFC was still able to win 2-1 in this game. And in terms of the shots in this game, 19 shots compared to 4 that Montreal has. 5 shots on goal compared to 1 that the Impact had. 11 shots off target compared to 2 that the Impact had. 3 shots that was blocked compared to 1 that Montreal has. And possession-wise, 52% possession compared to 48% possession that Montreal has. And like I said, for TFC, they were the big winner of this week, because all those teams that were fighting for those last playoff spot have lost this week, and that they were the only team that were able to get a win, and that now they got a 3-point gap in terms of 2 teams that is tied at 8th place right now, and that they're also 3 points above the red line. And as for Montreal, yeah, this death spiral that they are in just continues, and that I'm pretty sure after this resort somewhere in Houston, a lot of the Dynamo fans are probably dancing in the rain, because they probably just told Montreal fans that, yeah, told you that Wilmer Cabrera was not a good coach, and that we told you that he of course late in the game sometimes makes some very dumb kind of substitution and trying to pack it in and get a point out, but yet late in the game, it seemed like whenever a Wilmer Cabrera team play in the last 15 minutes, it's like the worst team in the league, with them always find a way to concede a goal late into the game to sometimes either get drop 2 points in a game or drop all 3 points in a game. And once again, it's shown in this one where in the last 15 minutes, Montreal concede, and that a Wilmer Cabrera team concede late in the game. And yeah, for the Impact, I mean, this is what you were trying to get when you trying to maybe sign a coach that, you know, clearly he didn't have a good record with the Dynamo in the last couple of seasons, and that he has a history of seeing his team conceding late goals in the latter part of the game. So yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much it for part 1 of this review. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of these first 6 games. Like I said, the last 5 games that I am going to be reviewing will be after El Tráfico between the Galaxy and LAFC at 9:30 p.m. my time and 12:30 a.m. Eastern time. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.